Jack Dorsey is one of the great contradictions of Silicon Valley. He's an innovator, a minimalist, and, believe it or not, a punk rock idealist who built one of the most powerful communication tools on the entire planet. But what happens when the creator starts to turn against his own creation?
And this, right here, is the central paradox of Jack Dorsey's career. On one hand, he's the guy who gave us Twitter, a massive, centralized platform that shapes global conversation from one single corporate hub. But on the other hand, he's now one of the most vocal prophets for a decentralized web, a future where, well, there's no central control at all.
So it really forces us to ask the core question here. Who is the real Jack Dorsey? Is he the focused CEO, the tech philosopher, or is he the rebel who just wants to tear down the very systems he helped build?
Okay, let's dive into this whole story. We're going to explore his really unconventional personality, trace his rebellious roots, then we'll unpack the immense pressures of running Twitter, and finally, follow his big pivot to Bitcoin and his dream of a decentralized internet to really understand his truly unfinished legacy.
So to really get his ideas, you first have to understand the man himself. And let me tell you, he is not your typical tech CEO.
Just look at the contrast. This is a multi-billionaire who lives a life of extreme discipline. We're talking 1 meal a day, meditating for 2 hours, regular ice baths, the whole 9 yards. But get this, before he was a tech mogul, he also trained to be a massage therapist and even had a thing for fashion design. It's not exactly the standard resume for the founder of a global social network.
So where does a mindset like that even come from? Well, to find out, we have to go back to his early days growing up in St. Louis.
His timeline kind of reads like the classic tech prodigy story, right? He got his first computer when he was just 13 and taught himself how to code. By 15, he was already writing dispatch software for taxi services, which, by the way, is a massive clue for what was coming next. And like so many founders, he eventually dropped out of college to go chase his big ideas in California.
But really, the seeds for Twitter, they were planted way, way earlier. He had a stutter as a kid, which forced him to appreciate short, direct communication. He was also obsessed with city maps and spent hours just listening to police radios. And that's where he got hooked on what he called the elegance of dispatch, that constant, short, real-time flow of information. And he took this tech obsession and fused it with this, well, a rebellious philosophy. As he said himself, "I am still a punk. It's about questioning the status quo." For him, punk wasn't just music. It was a blueprint for innovation. It's this idea that you can start messy, but you have the confidence to just try something new and learn fast. The exact same spirit he believes creates amazing things like Linux.
All right, so let's see how this dispatch-obsessed punk rock coder actually used that philosophy to create a global communication tool that kind of changed everything.
The idea for Twitter wasn't some grand master plan. It was born at a struggling podcast company called Odeo. Jack pitched a super simple idea, an SMS service to share your status with friends, like what are you doing right this second. He and his colleagues built a prototype in just 2 weeks, and in March 2006, he sent out that now famous first tweet.
But his leadership was challenged almost immediately. By 2008, the board had forced him out as CEO. They said he was too focused on his outside interests, like yoga and fashion design, and not focused enough on making money. That's a brutal rejection from the very company you created. But in a classic Silicon Valley movie plot, he made a triumphant return in 2015.
And that return, it threw him right into the middle of this impossible storm. Think about it. He's in this total pressure cooker. You've got investors screaming for Facebook-level profits. At the exact same time, Democrats are blasting him for not doing enough to stop misinformation, while Republicans are accusing him of censoring conservative voices. He was the one guy everyone could blame, caught in the crossfire. There was just no way to win.
And that experience, right there, being the ultimate decider, the single target for everyone's anger, that's what completely flipped his entire philosophy on its head. It led him to reject the very idea of a central authority.
So, this is what led him to get totally obsessed with the concept of decentralization. So what does that even mean? Well, to put it simply, it's all about moving power away from one central place, like a single company, and spreading it out across a network where no one person or group is in charge.
And actually, his journey into this whole new world had started years before. During his time away from Twitter back in 2009, he co-founded Square, which we now know as Block. And the goal at first was pretty simple, just empower small businesses by letting them accept credit card payments on a phone. But it was a trip he took to Africa in 2019 that really transformed his fintech company into a full-blown philosophical mission. He saw firsthand how entrepreneurs were using Bitcoin to work outside of unstable traditional financial systems. And for him, this was the aha moment. It led him to declare, Bitcoin changes absolutely everything. I don't think there is anything more important in my lifetime to work on.
And look, this wasn't just talk. He put his money where his mouth was, directing his company Block to invest heavily, piling up over 8,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet. This was a huge, powerful signal of his deep conviction that decentralized finance was the real future. So this fierce new belief he had, it would eventually lead him to make maybe his most dramatic move ever, basically dismantling his own legacy.
So yeah, in November 2021, Jack Dorsey steps down as CEO of Twitter. For good this time. His reasoning was straight out of his new playbook. He basically said that a company is too fragile, that it's a single point of failure if it's too tied to its founder's influence. He was stepping away to let it truly be free. So after that, he threw his support behind Blue Sky, a project to create a decentralized social protocol. But he eventually soured on it. Blue Sky ended up forming a traditional corporation and building moderation tools. In his mind, it was just becoming Twitter 2.0, making all the same mistakes. He has since fully embraced Nostro, which is totally different. It's an open protocol, which means there's no company, no board, and no central control deciding who gets to say what. For Jack, this is the real deal, the purest stuff.
I mean, his whole mission now can be summed up perfectly in this recent quote. Don't depend on corporations to grant you rights. Defend them yourself using freedom technology. This is his direct challenge to the very model of the web that he himself helped build.
And that pretty much brings us to where Jack Dorsey is today. His journey has been this complete transformation from a celebrated founder into a sort of philosopher king of decentralization. And he's now pushing to basically take apart the very kind of digital world he helped construct. And his whole story, it forces all of us to wrestle with a massive question. The man who built the digital town square now believes it should have no mayor, no rules, no one in charge. And this leads to the ultimate challenge. Is his vision of a truly decentralized web a workable utopia? Or is it a chaotic fantasy? Can the systems of control ever truly be taken apart by the people who built them in the first place? That is Jack Dorsey's unfinished legacy, and the great open question for the next era of the internet.